Hello and welcome to the program. The UN General Assembly has adopted a Ukraine-initiated resolution calling on Russia to withdraw its military forces from occupied Crimea as well as other parts of Ukraine. It also condemns the increasing Russian military presence in the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. 66 voted in favor of this resolution, 19 against, and 72 member states abstained. So what does this mean for Ukraine? To talk about this and more, we're joined by Osmolovska, the Executive Director at the Institute of Negotiations. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hello.
So, just to kind of start unpacking this resolution, why is it so important for Ukraine that the UN General Assembly adopts it?
Well, the very fact that the General Assembly adopted this particular type of resolution, I mean, the essence of the text of the resolution is very important to Ukrainian government and diplomats, because this would enable Ukraine to refer to this document in different international forums and to highlight that the top international fora, such as General Assembly of United Nations, has voted in favor of this document. So at least big part of majority countries supports the position of Ukraine. And we have to say also that Ukraine was not alone in drafting this document. A number of countries participated in making this draft text of the resolution. So this enabled actually Ukraine to count on more supporters, not just from those countries who were co-authors of this resolution, but also their allies, natural allies in the world. Therefore, even if we're saying about just 66 who voted in favor, at least the resolution was passed. The text which is adopted duly reflects the Ukrainian position, and Ukraine could refer to this document in different forums. And then
that's very, very important, of course. So President Poroshenko, he said that this is the first step towards the liberation of Russian-occupied Crimea, this particular resolution. Do you agree with this statement?
It depends on how the president sees the general strategy of taking Crimea back. In terms of the strategy which Ukraine could apply, seeking the resolution of international courts, which could be applicable to Russia, and Russia would agree with this resolution of international courts, then this is a very good step, because this strengthens the position of Ukraine while making Ukrainian case in court and defend Ukraine's position. But this move still implies that Russia should somehow at least give their consent that she recognizes the resolutions of international courts. So far, we don't see this position of Russia, and therefore this strategy might be workable in a quite distant future.
Right. So potentially in a court case that Ukraine might bring against Russia. Yeah. But you just mentioned some of the key points that were in the resolution itself. So I've seen some of the key points that the UN mission, that the Ukraine UN mission posted on their Twitter, and some of those points include the kind of language where it's expressing grave concern, condemnation. These are words we've heard before from Ukrainian allies and from different supporters of Ukraine and leaders, etc. So what sort of response can Ukraine expect from Russia, given the language in the resolution and given the main points in it?
Well, I think all of us have to be quite realistic about the Russia response to this resolution. We already received some comments from Russian officials with regard to this resolution, saying that they feel very sorry about the very fact that such type of resolution was passed, ignoring completely the Russian position and Russian Russian approaches to some amendments to the draft text. So these were ignored by the countries who considered actually this resolution, and therefore Russians said that they will be pursuing and giving their view of what's going on in Crimea to all of the international counterparts. So we understand that Russia will be following the same way they are doing right now. They're not recognizing this resolution and the very text of it, and also they try to speculate on the number of countries which supported the resolution. But to defend the Ukrainian side, I have to say that among those countries who supported the resolution, we see also such countries like Italy, Hungary, Greece, which are considered to be half loyal to Russia when we are talking about, for instance, EU sanctions against Russia.
Right.
But they supported the resolution. Also, Israel supported this resolution.
Right, but one of the countries which voted against the resolution is Belarus, and President Petro Poroshenko has recently visited Belarus, and he's, I believe we have a tweet, if we can have it on screen now, where President Poroshenko tweeted the following. He said, cooperation between Ukraine and Belarus is based on friendship, and we are confident that relations have seen serious growth. The economy of our countries show that the growth is more than 23%. And it's important to keep these trends. And as we can see on screen now, there's Petro Poroshenko with Lukashenko, the president of Belarus. What sort of message is that? That a Ukrainian partner and a country that the Ukrainian president visits and sees as a potential bilateral ally, and yet Belarus does not vote for Ukraine at the General Assembly for such an important resolution, as you just said yourself?
Yes, I think that this voting of Belarus gives a strong ground for Ukrainian side in talking about the idea of Belarus being a mediator or interlocutor in this conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Because when President Lukashenko declared his intentions to be such a mediator, Ukrainian side was a bit reluctant to see him like that, referring to the voting of Belarus in United Nations, as it expressed earlier. So this voting against resolution signifies to Ukraine at least that Belarus can't be unbiased country in this sense, and having this fact that Belarus is an allied country with Russia, they're having a sort of political military union as such, so they have some sort of allied relations. Belarus can't be totally independent intermediator between the two countries. This would give Ukraine a very strong argument to explain to Belarus why is it not possible for them to get engaged as an unbiased interlocutor, and on the other hand, not distorting very much political relations between the two sides.
And so what sort of strategy or what sort of relationship should the Ukrainian government seek with Belarus? Because on one side, we have the president in a very seemingly friendly photograph with Lukashenko. And then on the other hand, we have Belarus voting against Ukraine on such an important issue. So how should the government adopt its approach to Belarus, given the latest vote at the UN General Assembly?
I think the most important right now for our government, for our president, is to find out with Belarus why they're acting like that. And these conversations should be held behind closed doors. So it's not going to be something very public, because only in this case we can expect that Belarus would be quite frank in explaining the reasons, because I'm pretty sure that Belarus experienced some pressure from Russia on Ukrainian case, and therefore they're not very flexible, and this is not something intrinsic for them to act like that. So something is pressing them to act like they're doing right now. So this is one part of the strategy, and then possibly to reconsider some public messages from both sides and to adjust them to reality, because really, as you rightly mentioned, this creates a sort of cognitive misunderstanding what's happening. So on the one hand, they're shaking hands, declaring very strong friendship.
It certainly sends mixed messages, I think, on both sides of the board. So just to kind of talk more about this resolution, we've seen that 66 countries voted in favor, more than 20 voted against, and then 72 countries abstained. Now, that's more than those who voted for it. What sort of message is that, do you think?
I think that it means that the countries don't have, first, either don't have enough information to make their own assessment, which could be seen justifiable for them, if you wish. And the other, most of the countries don't care, actually, because this is quite distant conflict for them, so they don't feel very close touch, and therefore they just simply don't care. So in the case, the first reason is true. Ukraine diplomacy has to work hard in order to invest more in counter-propaganda and doing more information campaign among the countries about what's going on with this conflict with Russia. In the second case, we have to be realistic and have to understand that this is probably the local matter, which is at high importance for Ukraine, but probably for the minor importance for some countries in Latin America. And to understand this, we have to reconsider our strategic chains and to talk to those countries which might be interested in working closer on this issue. I mean, right now, the European countries first.
Right. So Ukraine should seek potentially new diplomatic corridors with different countries around the world. I think that's a very interesting point to leave it on. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much.
So we've been joined by Yulia Osmolovska. She's the Executive Director at the Institute of Negotiations. You're watching UATV.